I don't know if I have any photos of the trash.
See, that doesn't surprise me. It's like, who wants to take pictures of garbage? Hi, welcome to Luke and Phil Chat, or Luke and Phil Talk, and some sort of topic. Today's topic is trash. Not to say that it's bad, but it's actually trash. Not in a negative adjective way, but rather in the noun sense of the word.
Trash talk.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious. Why are we talking about trash today?
Okay, so coming to Japan, you always hear Japan's such a clean country. And when you're touring here, it is really clean. You don't see a whole lot of litter lying around compared to other countries necessarily. And I've yet to have to avoid, say, a broken vodka bottle lying on the ground, which was a regular occurrence in Minneapolis, St. Paul. No offense, Twin Cities, but then living here, you experience the other side of trash, which is the trash inside your home has to be taken outside of your home, rather than walking around and just noticing that there isn't any lying around. It's just different enough compared to the United States that I thought it was an interesting topic, because it's one you don't really think about when you're thinking about foreign countries. You don't go, what does Japan do with their garbage? Nobody really,
Yeah, so I live in southern Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
and every week I have I think it's a 65-gallon trash receptacle, which is on two wheels and it's got a flip lid, and I put that out on the curb, and the garbage truck comes by and collects that every week. Every other week, I have a 95-gallon recyclable tub, which is a little bit larger than our trash thing, and every other week they come by and pick that one up. Because of the way my cousin and I live, we actually only put out our trash cans once or twice a month because we just don't make that much trash. So that's kind of what it's like, I think, for most Americans in most towns. At least if you're in a house situation, you have large trash bins that you put out and someone comes and collects them.
Right.
If you're in an apartment or something, then maybe you have a dumpster that you take stuff down to, and somebody comes along once a week or whenever and empties the dumpster.
Right. And do you pay for that? Not the dumpster, but like for you?
Yeah, I think the amount is kind of added into my water utility bill. So I just pay the city once a month for whatever utilities they provide, and I think that garbage is included.
Okay.
So you say this is different from Japan. How?
Yeah, Japan is not like that at all.
How is it in Japan?
So, in Japan, let's do a little history first. Back in the 1950s, the combined spending money of all Japanese people was 7 trillion yen in 1950. In 1970, it was 132 trillion yen. So it was about 20 times as much in 20 years. And with that, they got way more stuff and made way more garbage, but they didn't have a system in place to deal with that much garbage. And so the system they eventually came up with was each municipality deals with garbage in their own way. So me living in Kotoracho, the way I throw out garbage and the rules for it are entirely different than if I lived a city over in Kuriyoshi or a city over in Yonago or in anywhere in Japan. It's going to be different. To me personally, that's probably the dumbest way you could organize garbage collection. Like, is garbage collecting so different from this city to the one over that...
Okay, so there's different rules in every municipality.
Right.
Each municipality comes up with their own rules then?
That is correct. So instead of having a national government or a state, or in this case, prefectural government, decide the rules based on evidence and science and having engineers be able to explain things, they had some mayor and his buddies come up with a way to gather garbage for each town.
Now, I'm no garbageologist, but it seems to me the process should be pretty simple. that if people have garbage and they need someone to come and take it away.
It would be great if it was simple. But since each city has different rules, you never know if you're going to be in a simple place or a difficult place. We live in one of the simplest places, which is great. But for example, there's a town in Shikoku which has 44 distinctive sets of garbage. And you have to classify your garbage into those 44 sets and then put it out depending on which of the 44 categories it's in. And I know that's just like one region, but why are you letting a small town decide that? And sure, it's probably great for the environment, but who has time to categorize their trash into 44 compartments? No one. Then there's Yokohama City. Lots of times when you're walking around, places that are trying to advertise to you will have these people standing around and they have tissues in little bags. Mm-hmm. And they'll just give them out because they have advertising on them. And you can also buy those at the store. Depending on whether you bought those at the store or were given them, you throw them away in different ways in Yokohama City. They have different rules for whether you bought them or received them from a person for free.
What?
They're the same thing. If you can't remember, I don't know how you decide. But a small city government decided that that was the best way to do things. And their explanation is basically, if everyone recycled them all, it would cost a lot of money for us, and we'd have to raise taxes. So instead, we have that split in half. Which sounds like one of the dumbest reasons I can think of. Like, recycling is expensive, so we really want you to just burn it. But we don't want you to burn all of it, because that's bad for the environment. So only burn the ones that are given to you for free. So anyway, with all of these dumb local rules out of the way, in general, trash gets picked up at a specific location. You may not put your trash out the night before. It gets picked up in the morning. I have until 8 a.m. to take my trash to a location, which was recently moved from near our apartment to like 2-minute walk away. So I have to put it in the city approved trash bags. I'm technically supposed to write my name on it, but no one here does that, thankfully. And then you put it under a net and it gets picked up in like an hour. And so if you ever miss a trash day, it's not so bad, but that's only for small burnable garbage. Once a month, you get non-burnable garbage, and then specific days, which change every month, you get different recycling. So PET bottle recycling and other recycling is 1 day a month. Cans get 2 different days per month. Glass bottles get a different day per month. And you have to keep track of that. Say you have 15 cans because you used a lot of canned food. You missed the can day. Now you have those cans for another 2 weeks. Hope you can throw them out that time. Hope you aren't on vacation or something. Because you're just going to pile them up. No one's going to take them. You can't put them out beforehand. Have to do it on the day before 8 a.m. So it's lots of fun. As a American who is used to the idea of having a giant box that you throw your trash into, and then you either burn it or have someone pick it up, and you're done, it was very frustrating to experience this sort of rigid system that was like arbitrarily created by a small government to, to meet whatever needs they thought were important. But it's what you get when you live here.
So, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Does the city provide calendars that have all these days marked out?
Yeah. If you want to here, I don't know if you're going to want to like show that on the screen or something. That might be too much work, but I send you a link to the handy little chart so you can see. This is from last year.
Oh. This doesn't look complicated.
Yeah, so it's simple.
At all.
Non-burnable trash, or actually burnable trash in my area is every Tuesday and Friday, except for August 11th and December 29th. And then non-burnable trash and small appliances are once a month. And then non-burnable large trash and burnable large trash are 3 times per year for each of them, respectively. Glass gets its own thing depending on the small little area you live in, once per month. Cans get twice per month. And then other recyclables get once per month.
Wow.
And you just got to know and keep track and organize. One last thing that I have to talk about trash is between the 50s and the 70s, Japan was growing so rapidly that they didn't have the infrastructure to deal with the amount of trash they were producing. And trash was actually piling up in the streets some places. And so one region in Tokyo got a trash incinerator, so they were actually able to deal with their garbage. And other regions didn't have that yet. And so people started having trucks deliver their garbage to that specific spot. And there were just like piles and piles of garbage there, and they couldn't handle it. And so they called it the Trash War of Tokyo, because it was basically a fight between that district and other districts which were trying to pile their garbage into it because they didn't have room for it, and that district which didn't want everyone piling their garbage into it. But they finally made peace, and nowadays it's a pretty clean place. So tell me about China, because you mentioned garbage. I would guess China is somewhat where Japan was in the 70s and 80s, where they're starting to catch up to where their garbage production is, but they aren't there yet. But I don't know. So
yeah, one of the first big shocks, like mental, like, oh, this is really interesting. I remember having in China was on my first trip over there when we were coming back through Hong Kong. This guy was carrying home a printer, and it wasn't in a box. It maybe had like a strap around it or something so we could hold it better.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized these people are buying things, and they're either leaving the styrofoam in the shop they bought it from, because they aren't carrying home this thing in a box covered with styrofoam, or they just don't have it packaged in a protective layer like that, because they just don't have space. So there's all these shops with different stuff, and they're tiny. It's all ground. You just walk in, the storefront's almost wide open or all glass, and they're selling just everything under the sun. And I had this sense that there's probably a lot of stuff here that doesn't get packaged the same way, just because there's so many people living in such a tight space. They just don't need to deal with the garbage in the same way. So China proper, and this does kind of apply to Hong Kong as well, people don't sit on the ground. If they are sitting on a bench, like on a bench or on the sidewalk or somewhere, they are sitting on a piece of newspaper sitting on the ground, because everything is so dirty there. You don't sit on the ground itself.
Ooh, yikes.
They also don't really wash their hands when they go to the bathroom. So I don't entirely know where they draw the line on this. So that was one. They don't clean up after their dogs. When they're walking their dogs, if the dog poops on the sidewalk, the dog poops on the sidewalk.
Oh boy.
On my way from the apartment I lived in to the small part of the city that was close by, there must have been some sort of landfill garbage dump area there. And whether it was an intermediate stuff gets dumped here until it gets taken somewhere else, or whether it was kind of a larger landfill, I'm not sure. But there was a section of the walk where occasionally things would smell really, really bad as you walked past. Around the apartment I lived in, there were these little tiny garbage/recycling, I think they were mostly garbage stations sprinkled around the walkways. They were probably the size of a small doghouse. They would fill up and people would just pile stuff around them if there was too much.
Yeah.
Then people would come and pull it away. I don't know if there was a set day when stuff got taken away. We went on a hike once. There's these nice mountains we could hike by, and at the beginning of the trail was a garbage container like this where people could put their stuff. And I don't remember what it looked like on the way going, but on the way back, when everybody had like already gone up and come back through, it was overflowing with garbage everywhere.
Yikes.
Plastic bottles, wrappers, everything else. Along the trail itself, in the woods, people would discard things and just kind of let it go. There's that one scene in Futurama where Fry makes that Oreo type cookie where each part is packaged individually. That's kind of how the packaging stuff works.
Right.
You buy a little bag of cookies, and every single cookie inside the bag is individually packaged.
It's the same way here.
Yeah. So there's a lot of little wrappers, a lot of little pieces, and people just don't seem to care much about the environment. They just toss stuff. Usually they try to toss it, I think, near a garbage can, but the amount of people they have throwing stuff away versus the size of the receptacles to hold them, just not quite doing enough. In Shenzhen, when I was at this big park, I did take one photo of a garbage can that was just overflowing with more garbage.
Do you have that?
Yes, I do have that. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Okay.
You want me to send it? I can open up Lightroom here. I think I know where it is.
Kind of interested in seeing what it's like.
I lived along the coast, and the South China Sea is also a very dirty sea.
Yeah.
There was a lot of just trash and garbage that washed ashore, or that, like, old fishing nets that were just covered in mud and muck.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Let me just export this photo. I will send this to you through Skype.
Okay.
Boop. And this one isn't that bad compared to perhaps some of the other ones.
Yeah, I see.
Overall, I think that, yes, they just produce a lot of garbage, and the system for dealing with the garbage probably isn't quite up to handling the volume that needs to be handled.
Right. Do they recycle it all in China?
I'm not sure. Some of the recycling, or some of the trash receptacles had green and yellow sides to them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those got switched. I really couldn't tell the difference between the two symbols. They kind of look the same.
Yeah, I see your trash can there. I was like, well, that side's recycling and that side's recycling.
And I think stuff just got thrown into both sides of it. If people were sorting it out, I don't think it actually lasted very long.
Yeah.
The other thing with trash is there's always a lot of construction going on.
Mm.
And with all of these storefronts that are basically at street level or sidewalk level or maybe one step up, a store would go out of business and they would gut the store. And so you're walking down the sidewalk, and it was a wide sidewalk, but in the middle of the sidewalk is this pile of broken glass and chipped tile and the ceiling and sand and everything, because they would basically gut the space down to the concrete.
Right.
And then build it back up. And then
Mm-hmm.
when the next business came in, whether that was 3 months later or whether that was 2 years later, whenever they switched over to the new thing, they would just repeat the process.
They actually do that in Japan too, except they throw the stuff away. But close down businesses and things, they just tear the whole thing down to concrete.
That's some ways that's fascinating to me. I don't feel like we do that here in the States. At least not to the extent.
Right. That actually plays into Japanese and presumably Chinese culture of buildings not being assets in the same way.
Mm.
You know, if you own a building in America, you're basically gaining value just by owning it. You know, buildings rarely lose value unless there's like a housing crash or something. Whereas in Japan and presumably China, since they're doing the same thing, buildings aren't expected to last. Between earthquakes, high temps, high humidity, and other things, most buildings are expected to last maybe 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're built with the idea in mind that you're going to build a building and tear it down in 30 years. So no point in insulating it. No point in making it really nice because you're just going to tear it down. It's not an asset that you would store money in. As in Tokyo and big cities, it might be a little different. But for smaller shops and things, like you aren't saving any money by keeping the building around, is the idea.
So I know in China, there's something, I don't have the specifics, but I know there's something with how when people buy property, they actually are kind of renting it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you purchase property, it's really, you have it for, I think, 70 years at most or something to that effect.
Right.
Is that how, when you buy a place, like, do you own the land or do you own the place?
Yeah, you actually own it in Japan. Japan has a crazy long history of land ownership because they have basically a family register system, which would also keep track of land ownership, to my knowledge, going back like 700 years.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, when I went to Osaka with Haley, hoping to see the bento shop that I had been going to when I was studying abroad,
Mm-hmm.
we got to the building and it was gone. It was just concrete on the ground, and I was like, that's sad. Like, if it was closed down, that would be one thing, but like the building's not even there anymore.
Oh.
So I don't know if the family retired and just got rid of it, or if they passed away. I don't know.
Yeah. As I walked down the streets, one of the things that was very foreign to me and took a long time to get I don't know if I ever really got used to it, was just the fact that you can go from walking and smelling like the crisp autumn leaves or dried leaves on the ground and the flowers that are maybe blooming at that time of year to smelling a rancid stench of garbage to smelling fried food, which kind of smelled good, and then smelling stagnant water that is either
Oh, yeah.
sewage water or has been sitting there for a while, and then you're smelling diesel fumes from all the and traffic stuff that's going by,
Mm-hmm.
and you just walk 2 blocks.
Yeah. I feel like that's partly because of the compactedness of Asian countries in general. Not entirely, because China has their garbage problems and sewage stuff, so that's part of why you're smelling it in the first place. But
Yeah,
the space that they would do all those things in is less than in the U.S.
yeah,
It's all just next to each other. So you have a picture of a trash can.
yeah.
Japan doesn't really do trash cans.
They don't do trash cans.
So, for example, say I have some trash that I want to throw away,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a bottle that I can put into a thing by a vending machine.
Okay.
From our house, the nearest trash can is at the... does that station? Yeah, so the nearest trash can is at the train station. But outside of that, I think I'd have to go to a convenience store and go inside the convenience store to throw my trash away. But there's no outdoor trash can anywhere in town. And in bigger cities like Tokyo, it could be like, no, there's no trash here, no trash can. Just gotta keep walking. You'll find one maybe. Apparently, a lot of that is up to the decisions of the neighborhood committees, which are run by old people.
Mm.
And they don't like the looks of trash cans. And they never had trash cans when they were a kid. So a lot of places I've read that even have trash cans have had them removed because old people think they look ugly and they don't want to see garbage. As if somehow removing the trash cans from an area will decrease the amount of garbage you see lying around. But that's been trash in general has been a very frustrating experience in Japan. Just because it's so different, and the idea of like, please take your garbage home with you and throw it away is so foreign to me. Like, there are signs that are like, please take your garbage when you leave. And it's like, maybe you should just put a trash can here. Have a guy clean it up once a month. I don't know. Is that so novel an idea that you don't do it? I guess it works to some extent because most of the country is clean, but...
I'll send you this photo. We went to a wedding, and the wedding was held outdoors. The meal section of it was underneath a tent. It was kind of raining during the day. It was kind of awful. But as the cleaning people went around and emptied off the tables and everything, they basically threw everything into these giant tubs and carted it off, probably to throw by the side of the road somewhere, I assume. And the other stuff would just get tossed to the ground, and there were like half full bottles of, I don't think it was wine, it was maybe some sort of alcoholic beverage just kind of rolling around and clinking. This is what it looked like after the wedding.
Oh. I see. Yikes.
Yeah.
Is that like popcorn lying on the ground?
Probably. There was some sort of popcorn or something. Like,
I see those, that looks like wine bottles.
It might have been just peanuts or something weird like that. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Here's the aftermath of a meal. In China, we eat a lot of meals that are big group events.
Right.
Round tables. A lot of times there's a lazy Susan in the middle, but you have like 8 or 10 people around this table and you're sharing all these dishes together.
Mm-hmm.
You end up ordering, I don't know, a dozen. Like, it's usually the number of people you have eating plus 1 or 2 for how many dishes you have to work with.
Right.
Sometimes you finish all the stuff, sometimes you don't. Sometimes stuff gets left behind. This is the table, one of the tables at the wedding. You got some broth from a soup.
Watermelon.
You had watermelon, which was actually really good and sweet. Had some bitter melons, had the bones of, because everything has bones and nobody eats the bones, so you just have piles of bones and shells and other things.
Man, I miss watermelon.
Yeah, you don't want to buy that $80 watermelon.
No. Turns out I'd rather eat for a week. One thing that really surprised me when I was looking into Japanese trash was Japan actually has a pretty low recycling rate.
Really?
Yeah. Some European countries have really high recycling rates. America is at 34%. The UK is 39%. Germany and Austria are 62 and 63%. Belgium's 58%. France is 35%. South Korea is 49%. Japan is 21%.
Really?
Yeah, it's like really low. That's like really strange to me because of how much they force you to categorize things, but they burn most of their plastic. So I think that's part of it, is just they don't have the recycling rate quite as high because they're using so much plastic to contain like anything. Almost everything you get is like a plastic thing with plastic things inside it. You know, you get some cookies in a plastic bag and they're in a plastic tray inside, and each cookie is individually wrapped in plastic. And then you open each one and throw them all away and throw everything away. And so I think that might be why the recycling rate is so low. Or if it's not plastic, it might be like aluminum, and it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just surprising to me, given the amount of care that I need to be giving to how I throw away all my stuff. It's still lower than even the United States by a good amount.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, so Japan is just above Slovakia and Mexico on the recycling list. So I don't know if I have anything else to say about recycling or trash. And so this is Japan, and make them think a little bit.